So at least everyone's here, so at least you heard that and you'll know what this kind of sort of means. So what was your question? Going off the screen. So let's do that with our character, because a lot of people, a lot of students want to do that. So if this is my character right here, this is X of the player, Y of the player, correct?
Yes.
This right here is the X of the screen. Make sense? This is 0, 0. This is X of the screen, 0. This is X of the screen, Y of the screen. And this is 0, Y of the screen. So as my character is moving around, if I get here, we don't want our character to go further than that, correct? So our X position of our player is what? When our character is right here, right at the border, the X position of the player equals what?
Wouldn't the Y? The Y would be 0.
Oh, you're totally right. I always screw this up in my head. The Y position of the player would be what? 0. So, if our Y position of our player is what, we want our Y player to equal what?
0.
So if it go, where does 0 go?
Both.
For there, 100%. Up top, depends on, if we put 0 here, what needs to go here?
Equals?
Less than, right? So if our Y position is less than 0, we're going to rewrite the Y position of our player to be 0. So that means that when our player is here, if he starts to get up here, this is a negative Y value, correct? So then as soon as it gets up, it immediately puts it back down. So in essence, what'll happen is it looks like your character just walks and is just up against the wall. He doesn't flicker because what we do is we don't blit it when it has the negative value. Make sense? Okay. And then you would do if Y position is greater than what? So we have it if he goes in the negatives. What happens if he goes this way? How do we block him in here?
It's just greater than your screen size.
Yep, Y of the screen is going to equal Y of the screen. Now some players have done, if you're walking this way, you're immediately transported over here. Which isn't that hard. So if the X position is less than 0, the X position equals X position of the S. X position of the screen. So what'll happen is you'll immediately jump over here, and then you just switch it where if I go this way, I jump over here. So you can make portals on the edges like in Pac-Man. I don't know if you guys have played Pac-Man. But if you go off one end, you come in the other. Jason?
No, I was just asking if you can make that a very specific area, not just like the entire screen. Or could you only do that for like a specific, if you were going like the top and bottom, that same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Could you do it to where it's only in between two specific X?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You would just say that in here, so this is 100 to 150 pixels. So if the Y position of player is in between, is in between here, or you can actually put a picture here. And if you put a picture here, you can put a rectangle around it, and we're going to get over that, and that's how you detect collisions. So basically, this is our bunny with his arm holding, and then this is, a portal or whatever I can't draw. What we do is we put a rectangle around our bunny, and then we put a rectangle
I'm so sorry.
around our portal, and if any part of this rectangle collides with any part of this rectangle, do something. So that's how, when we shoot an arrow and that collides with our badger, little tail, 1, 2, 3, 4. If these two touch, the badger and the arrow disappear. Colton.
Can you change that to be like a percentage?
I'm sure there is. I don't know how to do it off the top of my head. What you could do is you could, if it's a static picture, oh, that's going to be great for whoever is watching. Video capture, unlock. Now you can actually see the board. If it's a static image, you can make the rectangle smaller. So instead of it being the entire picture, you can squeeze the rectangle and make it smaller. But I think the command we use is specific for if this rectangle touches this rectangle. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to leave this on the board, and we're going to get into our game. Do you guys have questions on how the list works with the bad guys? Now, one thing I want to throw at you guys that a lot of students are confused, like, well, what if I want different types of enemies in my game? Well, there's a bunch of ways you can do that. You can copy and paste the code that we're using for our bad guys, and instead of having badgers, you could have like ring wraiths or something, and have it be the exact same code, just with different pictures. Or the cooler way, and the slightly harder way, is in our bad guys list, instead of having just X and Y position, you can put a picture. So you could have picture equal choice and have it choose ring wraith, badger, or a Koopa. Right? It will pick one of these and randomly put it in here. So we'll have ring wraith. And in here we'll have the Koopa, and in here we'll have the Koopa again. And now what we do is, instead of just messing with bad guys 0 and 1, when we get to blitting our bad guy, we do blit, bad guy. What index would that be? 6?
No.
Which index is our image in our bad guys list?
2, 3. I would yeah 2.
Bad guy 2. Oh wait, hang on, not that. And then where does this get blitted? Right, if we want this image to, where do we want it to be blitted? At our XY coordinates.
0.
So we would then put, I'm just gonna do BG for short, BG 0, BG 1, and I believe that's like that, and then it's like that. Does that make sense? Our list of bad guys contains all the information we want for every bad guy. Make sense? You guys have questions?
Well, it's a little bit unrelated.
Okay.
It's related to the video game. Can you change the size of the image that you put in?
Yeah. Image.transfer or transform. Yes, Jack.
How would you do like a health bar on like if you wanted a boss badger instead of just having the arrow hit it once and it disappears?
What you would do, we can add to here, and we could do health. And then once, running out of space to right. And then we do if arrow collide with bad guy. That's not the code, by the way. That's just me shorthanding it. We do bad guy 3 minus equal 1. And we have health value is, this would be our index. So you do minus equal 1. And then what it does is it keeps track of each bad guy. So if you want random bosses to be in there, you could have, health here. Health, which would go here, and picture is here. This should be a P, whatever. Health equals randint. 0, not 0. At least 1.
1,000,000.
1 to 1,000,000. I'm only gonna write 1,000. And then you would also need if BG3 equals 0, delete bad guy. And we're gonna go over what did you put this in the code? Where would you put this in the code? That's what we're gonna start working on today. Does that make sense to everyone? Your bad guy list needs to contain all of the information you want for your bad guy. And then just depending on what you want, you do things like this with colliding in the bad guy arrow and stuff like that. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do, again, any questions? No? Okay. Let me shrink this a little bit. Minimize. All right, so our code is on top. This is code for me, so I remember what we're doing. But the first thing we want to do for bullet and arrows, we need to build our timer, because our spawn, we don't want our bad guys to spawn. We want to count down, right? We don't want just one bad guy running around. We want after every 30 after every 2 seconds, we want another bad guy to go. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. After we, again, this pygame.display.flip needs to be at the very bottom of our code. It needs to stay right above our pygame.event.get. And we want our information for our bad guys, our bad timer, to be right underneath our blitting of our player. We also don't need this line of code anymore. That was to test to make sure that we were loading the correct image, and we are, so we're gonna get rid of that. So the first thing we're going to do is if bad timer equal 0. Have we created a variable for bad timer yet? No. So what do you think we should do now? Create it. So we're gonna scroll all the way to the top of our game. We're gonna go bad timer is 100. Yeah. We're also going to put at the very beginning of our while loop, bad timer minus equal 1. So this is the rate at which bad timer goes down. So if you want to speed up how quickly your bad guys show up, there's a bunch of ways you can do that. An easy way is to change this bad timer to a bigger number. Colton.
How can you change that so if you do like different bubbles, it would like speed up how fast?
That's a very good question. what you would want to do is you would make this like spawn rate, and up here you would do something like if level equal 1, spawn is 1. Elif level equal 2, spawn is 5. And so you would just have this equal a variable, and at some point during the level, some point during your code, you would have not level equals 1, and to dictate when you get to level 2, you'd have like your score. So if score is greater than 100, level equals 2. But I'll leave this commented out so that when you guys, if you have questions, you guys can take a look at this, because I saved this online for you guys. So if you ever get lost or you lose your code, you can take this. Jack.
It's kind of going off what he said. If the level were to change, like you get to 100, how would you display like a text that says, "Oh, you're now level 2"?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we display text in our game, but that's a little later. But you would basically say, I want you to render this font in this area and have it say this. If you want it to pause and have a screen come up and say, now you're on level 2, that's a little harder. But it is totally is doable. So bad timer minus equal 1 starts at 100. We're going to go bad timer if bad timer equals 0. The moment you change this number to anything besides 1, let's say we change it to 3. What's 100 minus 3? Well, let's start at 10. What's 10 minus 3?
7.
What's 7 minus 3?
4.
What's 4 minus 3?
1.
What's 1 minus 3? Do we ever hit 0?
No.
No. So what you'd want to do is you want to make this less than or equal to 0. This is something that I didn't think of the first time. As soon as someone changed it, they're like, my guy isn't spawning. It's because your bad timer skips the number 0 because it goes from 1 to -2, and then your code doesn't work because you never get bad timer. So once bad timer is less than or equal to 0, what we're going to do is we are going to add the coordinates of our bad guy to a Badguys list. Right? We need to create our Badguys list. I should have done this in a slightly different order instead of jumping up and down. Badguys is, and we're going to have a nested list. Make sure I have this right. Copy. Bad timer 1. Yeah. So we need to have these 3 for our bad guys. We need bad timer is 100, bad timer 1 is 0, and bad guys is a nested list with, this is going to be the first spawn of our badgers. It's always going to be in the same place. First badger will always spawn here. You guys have questions? Do you guys get these? Yes, Thorn.
Why are we using a nested list there?
Because we need to have X and Y values for our bad guys. What else would we do?
That's going to be our Badguys list.
Yes, this is our list of bad guys. So in here, guys, if you wanted to do like a picture and health, you would do picture equals random dot choice, and this is where you would put you would put, you know, ring wraith, Koopa, badger, and in here you would have ring wraith equal pygame.image.load ring wraith. I'm obviously not typing the whole thing out, but do you guys understand what you would do? and then we would make health equal, if you want every bad guy to have health of 3, this is how you would start your game. X position, Y position, what type of bad guy and how much health they have. Thorn.
So for our game, are we gonna put bad guy image as the picture?
Nope. Not yet. Yes.
So, how do you assign like different pictures with different outputs?
So if you started it, you would do this, and then when we get here, I'll show you. Real quick. Does everyone have what I had before I added health and picture? Okay, I'm gonna leave that there for now. Remind me if my code breaks. That's why. So let me scroll down here. We are gonna do bad guys dot. How do we add something to the end of a list again? Append. And we're gonna append to our list of bad guys a list of coordinates. 640, which is the edge of our game. Does everyone have 640? Please don't go through here. Don't use this, even though that's my next line. But just stick with me up here. So now in order for our bad guy to spawn at a random location between 50 pixels on our y-axis and 430 pixels, all we're going to do is we're going to add this random.randint 50, 43. So it will randomly pick a spawn point, random.randint 50, 430. Now right here, Colton, we could add picture and health. And what we would do is we would do we would have these 3. Picture. We would have this here. So the picture would randomly pick between our Ring Wraith, Koopa, and Badger. And our picture would be, our bad guy image would equal one of these 3 pictures. Our health would be 3, although in here you could make it a random number between 1 and 100, so you never know how many times you have to shoot a bad guy. Not the greatest gameplay mechanic, but whatever. And then you would add it, to here. And this is our bad guy. It's a bad guy that's going to spawn at 640 at some random Y position at the edge of our screen with a random picture and health 3. Thorn and then Jason.
So are we constantly adding more bad guys into the bad guys list using that line?
Yep.
And then if you want to do like the picture and health, could you make it where certain pictures have certain amount of health and then do it's better? So
yeah, you could do
the amount of health it has, so you can actually tell.
If bad guy image equal, you could do something like this. If you're fighting a Ring Wraith, they have a health of 3, but if you're fighting a Badger, health is 1. And then if you fight a Koopa, you could have health of 3. So you totally could do that, and this is this would probably work. I'm not going to say this will work because I haven't tested anything that I've written in like the last 5 minutes. So I have no idea. I don't have the Ring Wraith and the pictures put together. So, but this would probably work if I had to guess. Jack.
So if you wanted the game, like the game window to be like the full screen, how would you?
There's a couple different ways you could guess and just be like, let's do 1000 by 800 or 192 by 1920 by 1080. But there's also, so we got 9 minutes. Real quick, a lot of these questions will be, if you go to Pygame docs, index. Here we go. So this is all of the different things you can do with Pygame. So what you would want to do is Pygame something with the screen. So you would go toggle full screen. How do you do that? You click on it and it tells you exactly how to use it. So this, the most useful stuff, color, draw, event, all this sort of stuff. So if you just go to pygame.org/docs, it gives you all the information you'll need. Because I don't know everything you can do with Pygame. So if you have an idea, check here. And on this website, you should be able to find everything you need. So I'm going to get rid of all this. I'll just comment it out again so that it's there for you guys. Bracket. Oh, no. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yes.
So in the parentheses, by putting in brackets, are you adding a new list inside of the nested list?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, so what we're doing is we are starting with just a list of lists, and then we're adding this list inside of a list. Does that make sense?
Are you like adding it inside the Badguys list with, like, if you added another one, it would just be,
It'd be right at the end.
it would be at the end of those 3 lists?
Yeah, so if we added a 4th one, it would go comma x4 y4.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, so our bad timer is less than 0. We've added a bad guy to our list. And then what we do at the end of this, we go through our list again and blit that bad guy. So right now, we're not going to have any noticeable difference on our game. Once we do want our counter to count down so the time in between spawning decreases. Okay, so the way we do that is we have to have a number. So our bad timer is at 100, right? So it's after every 100 cycles, and let's just say your computer does 25 cycles a second. So after 4 seconds, you're going to have a bad guy. Well, we want that number to go down until a certain point. So we have to subtract a number from 100 in order to make that to go from 100 to 90, and then 70, and then 60, and then 50, and then 40, and then 30, and then it stays at 25. And then it's every second you're getting a bad guy. Does that make sense? Conceptually, does that make sense? Is that confusing anyone? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go bad timer. We're rewriting what bad timer equals. So we started with 100 and we want to change that. So we're going to go 100 minus bad timer, which is equal to what right now? 0, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Bad timer 1. What does that equal to? 0, yep. Times 2. So what will bad timer equal after the first time it hits 0?
It'll still be 100.
It'll still be 100 because bad timer is 0. So if we don't, or bad timer 1. If we don't change bad timer 1, our code, it will always be after every 100 cycles. So after every 4 seconds. So we need to change bad timer 1. So what we're going to do is if bad timer 1 is greater or equal to 35, wait. Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. Bad timer 1 is going to equal 35. So our upper limit for our bad timer is 35. Just like our upper limit for walking is the width of the screen. Right? So if our bad timer 1 gets above 35, it needs to stay at 35. Just like if our guy walks off the screen, he needs to come back. It's an upper limit for our bad timer. So at 35, which is the biggest our bad timer 1 can be, what will bad timer equal? Jack, any idea? So if bad timer is 35, we put bad timer back in here, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep, so bad timer will be equal to 30. So every just over a second, you'll have a bad guy spawning on your screen.
I think bad timer's still wrong on the bottom.
Oh yeah, I have bat timer. Like, I'm a Batman. Oh, here it is. Otherwise, bad timer plus equal 5. So we're going to start with a bad guy every 100 cycles. What'll happen is our bad guy, the time in between bad guys will decrease by bad timer 1 times 2. So it starts off at 0, and then bad timer becomes 5, right? And then 5 times 2 is 90, so 100 minus 90. I'm sorry, 100 minus 10 is 90, so then it will be every 90 cycles. And then every 80 cycles, and then every 70 cycles, and then every 60, 50, 40, and then it gets to 30 cycles, and then it stays there. Jack?
Should the bad timer and the else statement be bad timer 1? Or is it supposed to?
Nope, you're totally right. Bad timer 1. Good catch. I was wondering if any of you would catch that, so good job.
Oh, I thought I was wrong.
What?
I thought I was wrong. I didn't want to say anything in case.
No, it doesn't. I'll tell you this. You will be wrong and you will be right. The only way to know is by asking. So we have less than a minute left. We really don't have time to go through all of this. So yeah, we're gonna have to pause there. When you play your game now, you won't see any difference. So we'll just have to go over it on Monday. But good class.
Is there like a Morse code assignment?
Yeah, we're not gonna do